Hi, Cybersecurity class. This is Professor Opterbeck. I'm just touching base with you here from my home office where, like all of you, I'm doing the best I can to keep up and get things done, and I hope you're all hanging in there and staying healthy at this difficult time. So I wanted to just touch base with you with some updates about our class. First of all, I have posted the Week 9 quiz, so that is available for you. Note that there are a couple of short answers where I'm asking you to list some things, and those are worth more points than the other questions. I'll go back and read those, and if you get them partially right, I'll give you partial credit. But I don't think they're too hard, so I think you'll mostly get them right. The materials for Week 10 are posted. I wanted to note a couple things about that. First, I added a few things for you to look at on the Nist Guidelines, the Nist Cybersecurity Framework, which is really important. I'm not asking you to read all of it in a whole lot of detail, but I want you to know generally what it is and how it's used. And so I gave you a few more links on that. The videos include some materials on kind of technical things, firewalls, routers, firewall rules. Again, I'm not asking you to know a whole lot of technical detail, but I do want you to have some familiarity with these concepts, because as a lawyer you are going to need to be communicating in this area with the technological people, and you need to have some sense at least of what's going on. So I gave you those, and then there's a couple of videos that I produced last year. You'll see a couple references to speakers and things that we didn't have this year, but that's okay. But the substance is about risk management and about the NIST framework, which is our conversation for this week. I know some of you were able to get the autopsy thing to work, and some of you weren't. And I am tweaking a bit. In the past, I would give you an image file of a sort of made-up case study that you could play with doing some forensic work on in autopsy. But given that some of you have had problems getting it to work, especially with Macs, and we don't have access to the computer lab at the law school, I'm going to scratch that. So you've now got a little bit of feel for what computer forensics of that sort involve, and that's really what I wanted you to have anyway. I am going to ask you this week to install Wireshark. So that was another one of the open source programs, and in the discussion groups we'll talk a little bit about your experience with Wireshark. I think this one works okay both on Macs and on PCs, and all it is it's a packet sniffer, which means it's going to look at all of the traffic coming in and out of your network, and I think you'll be surprised to see the enormous volume of traffic. It's not just things that you're actively sharing, but your computer is constantly pinging to different applications, to different websites, and other things like that. So just again, play with it a little bit, get a feel for it, talk about your impressions, and then I also asked you to talk a little bit about your impressions of the NIST guidelines. I know these aren't big sort of philosophical questions. I'm just asking you to get a feel for having read it. The last thing I wanted to mention is that I have now posted the materials for what we are going to do for our final project, and I'm sort of calling it the capstone exercise here. So you'll see that there's a memo that lays out a hypothetical fact pattern. The memo includes a link to a YouTube video that you can watch to get a feel for the kind of products the company that the hypothetical company that we're dealing with would make. There's an organizational chart for the hypothetical company, and there's a worksheet for doing a tabletop exercise. A lot of things in the memo are not going to make sense to you yet. Next week, when we talk more about compliance tools, some of the tools that I mentioned in the memo will then make more sense to you after next week, but I at least want you to get a feel for what we're going to be doing. So here's my plan for it now under the circumstances that we're in right now. You will look at this memo after next week, the next couple of weeks, when we talk about insurance and finish talking about compliance frameworks. You're going to work on a PowerPoint presentation to the board. When we get together, whether it's in person or more likely virtually at our final summit, you will each present your presentation to the board. I know there will likely be overlap in them, but that's okay. We'll all kind of learn from each other. That'll be part of the project. And then the other part of the project is you'll see the final week we talk about a tabletop exercise, and I'm going to assign each of you roles within the company. to participate in a tabletop exercise. And again, whether we're in person or more likely virtually, we'll do a sort of mock tabletop exercise. I don't want you to stress out too much about all of those things. I think you'll all do a good job on the presentation to the board. The tabletop, you're all going to be playing a role. I expect, again, if everybody sort of just participates and works at it, everyone will do fine. So if you have any questions, send me an email. Meanwhile, keep at it and stay safe.